All right, welcome to the Young Turks. Cenk Uygur, Erlich with you guys. We've got a lot more folks showing up throughout the day. Got John and Aida Rodriguez coming up later as well to join me. And so Bernie Sanders has won both the Iowa and New Hampshire primaries, although you might not be able to tell if you are watching mainstream press. We're going to give you details on that in a second. And also, is Warren's campaign in a little bit of trouble? That's a little bit later in the program. Well, obvious answer is yes, but we'll talk through the details. And then Donald Trump going after more people who are actually doing their job and firing them and shredding the Constitution as we speak. So we have details, unfortunately, on that as well. And then in the third hour of the show, we got two things. One is the conversation, which is our interviews. One of the top progressive candidates in the country is going to join us, and so is the person heading up the movement to get Medicare for All passed. So huge day for you guys, and of course the last half hour is always just for the members. TYT.com/join to become a member. All right, Brett.
All right. So the New Hampshire primary was yesterday, and Bernie Sanders emerged victorious. It might be difficult to tell that given some of the coverage he has received. And so we went through some of the different places, different media outlets, mainstream media outlets, to determine just how they're handling it, given that there is undisputed evidence that Bernie came out with the win in New Hampshire. One tweet that came to mind for a lot of people was this Reuters tweet that says, Pete Buttigieg finishes second in New Hampshire primary, Amy Klobuchar third. That's the tweet. You would think that, I saw somebody tweeted like, in the big Super Bowl results, I think it might've been Aaron Ryan who's been on the show a couple times, big Super Bowl results, Demi Lovato killed it at halftime, and the San Francisco 49ers scored fewer points than would be expected, but it was still close.
Yeah, Reuters is in the business of news. So like maybe you think, oh, that's an interesting event that Klobuchar came in third. I think it is an interesting event. But when you go to get the news, the thing that probably people would be a little bit curious about is who won?
Yeah.
I mean, not even putting it in the headline.
It was fun to watch the different outlets. Here's a tweet from NPR. Klobuchar's third place finish in New Hampshire, quotes, shocked the establishment.
Which is hilarious. Sorry, Brett.
Yeah.
Like, because you want to see shock? Turn on any cable news station right now. They're all in a panic, sweaty panic over Bernie Sanders. They're like, what are we gonna do? What are we gonna do? Bernie's coming. But Klobuchar shocked the establishment by coming in third.
Yeah.
Again, you want to give her credit. We gave her a lot of credit last night. I continue to give her credit on Twitter. It's an interesting storyline. You should definitely do that storyline. But you should also do the storyline on the person who actually won and has everyone in Washington in a cold sweat panic.
Some are reluctantly accepting frontrunner status. I saw that. It was an amazing moment because I had both our feed and I was monitoring other outlets as it was happening. And the moment that they called the race for Bernie on CNN, it came out to Jake Tapper. And it was one of the most amazing moments I've seen on the news. And it's hard to find the day after, but as they called it, he said, Jake Tapper comes out and says, it is hard to deny that Bernie Sanders has attained frontrunner status. Bernie Sanders, who is a socialist Jewish man, and then just like immediately throws in these other facts. And then in comes Blitzer to say, who recently had a heart attack? And that was the first 35 seconds after announcing that Bernie had taken frontrunner status.
Yeah.
Now, do you feel like it's the same flavor? Because there were things where they said that after Warren kind of had some good showings, now she has scrutiny. Does this feel like the normal scrutiny that they throw on people once they achieve frontrunner status, or do you feel it's a little different?
When do we not get scrutiny? When does that happen? And I love normal scrutiny. I mean, the man's had thousands of negative articles written about him, and I've counted, I think, if I'm being generous, 3. 2 for sure, but maybe a third one out of the 5 years that he's been in the national spotlight, right?
Yeah.
So, we're giving scrutiny to Bernie because he's doing well now. Get off of it. Come on. By the way, Bloomberg, you guys are giving him thousands of positive press stories. He happens to be also advertising to the tune of hundreds of millions of dollars on your stations. And and he's rising up in the polls. Have you seen any negative stories outside of social media on Bloomberg? Are they doing panel after panel about how racist he is for saying, yeah, we target blacks and Latinos on purpose and we'll leave whites alone on purpose? Yeah, we know that even if they don't have contraband on them, I think they're guilty anyway. That's what Bloomberg said about young black and Latino men. Are you seeing that kind of scrutiny? No. So look, are there scrutiny? Is there more scrutiny for the people who start to lead? Yes. Have we covered scrutiny for Bernie Sanders? Come on, who are they kidding? They're a joke. So look, if you want to say it's a historic win, like for example, when Barack Obama won Iowa, historic win for an African-American candidate who now might be the front runner in the Democratic race, that's great, that makes sense. Historic win for a Jewish candidate that might be the first Jewish president ever, that's great, I like pointing that out. But like socialist Jewish, heart attack, that has a different tone. And I'm not saying they're anti-Semitic because I think Jake might be Jewish, I know Wolf is, definitely. Yeah, and so but they can't stand him, and their loathing just pours through and everything. Like even he's a front runner now is begrudging. Like it has to be acknowledged, even though God damn it, we don't want to. Yeah. I guess he's the front runner. Would they have said likewise about Biden or Buttigieg? Or Klobuchar? They probably would have had fireworks in the background.
Yeah, because they all have it ready. They all have it ready. What the thing is that they're going to say, and it's also like word association. It's the first thing that comes to mind after, and it isn't someone with an unprecedented grassroots organization behind them who has been able to grow that outside of your typical way of fundraising, who has completely changed politics in America. It just seems more or less to be like, all right, here's what I was ready to say. I was going to talk about his heart attack immediately. Yeah. Here's someone else, Jim Messina, who is a former head of Barack Obama's campaign. He came in and he has some interesting stats that he'd like to share with you. Let's take a look.
It's a very big deal. The turnout is higher than 2008. That shows you a base and a party that is united and very excited. And the second number that I think people need to watch is, over 55% of voters voted for a moderate candidate. They said the most important issue is who can beat Donald Trump. And that, if you're looking at that number, the big winner last night could be Mayor Bloomberg as he gets ready for Battleship Bloomberg and this unbelievable spending that's about to come our way. He's sitting back here ready to make a case that he's the best candidate.
That's quite a two giant leaps to go from here are the results, but here are the results if you add two people together, to here's who benefited from that, even though they weren't any of the two names of the vote totals that I added together.
Yeah. First of all, the guy who won the race is the one that wasn't in the race. Okay, if you say so, Jim, it's interesting math.
But is in the race, but is running for president. People had every opportunity to vote for Mike Bloomberg.
Well, in New Hampshire, he wasn't on the ballot, to be fair.
No, that's right.
Okay, no, but we're fair. But he certainly didn't win. Okay, no. And number two, it's actually not the top two moderates. The top two moderates, Buttigieg and Klobuchar, got 44. Messina said 55. He told all of the moderates in the race. It's like, well, if you had 8 against 1, then Bernie would have lost. That's not really how it works, okay? Yeah. I mean, how much stretching to joke, but moderate. But I mean, keep my paycheck coming. I'm a giant lobbyist for corporations. That's who Jim Messina is. He gets introduced as the person who ran Obama's campaign, and you say the magic word Obama, and people go, oh, he must be a good guy, right? No, he represents the biggest multinational corporations. He represented the conservatives in the UK. See, he represented some loathsome people in the UK, doesn't care about being progressive or Democrat or being on the left at all. He represents right-wingers. Why? He'll tell you. He'll be like, well, these progressives are being so unfair. I had to get paid. Oh, okay, I see. No, that's fine. Just, he should be introduced as high-paid lobbyist and consultant Jim Messina, who also works for right-wingers throughout the world and multinational corporations. And what a big surprise. It turns out he doesn't like Bernie Sanders. Oh, look at that, that's on MSNBC. Huh, the left-wing channel in Washington did not introduce him as such.
MSNBC was so difficult to watch. Like that was one, I ended up gravitating away, like I had ours open on one screen and then I kind of went back and forth between CNN and MSNBC at the beginning. But MSNBC was worse to me than CNN.
Always.
Because CNN had on the panel, they had Van Jones and Alexandra Rojas.
That's right.
And I was so happy. I even tweeted about it to see Alexandra out there just giving that perspective, which you wouldn't see anywhere else. Like I watch other analysis shows, I see like The Week and their idea of a progressive person or This Week with George Stephanopoulos, and their idea is like have Rahm Emanuel next to like Chris Christie, and that's it. But it was better, and it was, maybe it's just because there's more people on the panel. It was a more well-rounded discussion, but they didn't just have a certain brand of person echoing off each other over and over again.
So we cover all the debates and all the primaries and caucuses live. So don't miss a minute of it. It's super exciting. And last night we talked and we gave credit to Van Jones for a great point on CNN. Gave credit to CNN for the same exact thing, Brett, of having Rojas on, who's the executive director of Just Democrats. Meanwhile, at MSNBC, check out that video from yesterday. Go to tyt.com. Joy Reid was saying, well, like before, Bernie Sanders is unacceptable because he's independent. He's not even a Democrat. He's not a Democrat. Yeah. He's an independent. They then turn around when Sanders wins, and they're like, well, Bloomberg, it's like it's an advantage that he's an independent because then he'll get other independents. In fact, Joy Reid then said it's actually an advantage that he's a Republican or was a Republican. So Bernie being to the left of the Democratic Party is unacceptable, but Mike Bloomberg being a Republican is awesome for the Democratic Party.
And implicit in that is that Mike Bloomberg can go low. And that to them, their perception of someone being like actually like kind of mean, they laud that, they love it. Then they unfairly put onto the Bernie camp, these people are super mean and that's bad.
Yeah, I know, exactly. It's almost as if they don't actually care about being hypocritical and they're just trying to push against one candidate.
But my favorite person to watch and check in to see if he's okay throughout all this is Chris Matthews.
Yeah, of course.
So Chris Matthews, let's check in on him, see how he did last night.
It's unusual, this situation. So I'm a bit frustrated, and I'm not the answer to all questions. Brian and Rachel, I'm just not tonight. I'm a little frustrated because I don't know what this, it was a victory, a win's a win, as you say at the New York Giants, New York football Giants, yes. But it wasn't the victory of a guy that got 60% last time. And Buttigieg and Klobuchar together trounced Bernie tonight.
Okay, here we go again. Well, if Klobuchar and Buttigieg were the same person, then they would have won, maybe. But I guess a win's a win, but is it really? Here, I'm gonna question it by saying, what if the Chiefs had to play the 49ers and the Packers at the same time? You didn't think about that. And the new standard is he didn't get to 60%. That's a thing? That we have to now get to 60% for it to be a win? How about when Buttigieg was declaring a victory in Iowa? I don't remember you saying, well, he didn't get to 60%. Oh, well, if you put Bernie and Warren together, I don't remember any of that. I just remember you being super excited.
And then I saw, we didn't pull this clip, but I saw like Dave Chalian on CNN, I think it was like later on that night, saying, they keep showing the delegate count. And how the delegate count, they still have Iowa green for Buttigieg, and now they have New Hampshire blue for Bernie, but if you add up the vote count for both of those states, Bernie has more votes in each of those states and both of those states combined.
That's right.
But what's interesting is when Trump won the electoral vote but lost the popular vote, they were very angry, rightly, as I was. Like, we have this weird electoral system that results in somebody losing the popular vote but winning the election because of our weird electoral system. And in Trump's case, that is terrible. But fast forward to these primaries and caucuses, we have Buttigieg lose the popular vote, but win one of the states. And now, in the terms of pledged delegates, according to the numbers they've held over from a disputed Iowa, he's in the lead in the overall delegate count thanks to a really weird electoral system. Buttigieg winning, that's a great thing.
Yeah,
that loophole they're happy for.
Democracy, whatever, man. That's for when Democrats lose and we get really mad. But it costs an independent. Yes, hey, look, technically Buttigieg has more delegates. No, that's the system. That's the system. Trump has more delegates. The goddamn delegates. Come on, man. They have. Look, we can't stand Trump. The Electoral College is wrong, but you lose credibility for all of us when you act so obviously hypocritically.
Yeah, some other fallout from this. There was one person who works for, his name's Lloyd Blankfein, who's a finance guy. He says, if Dems go on to nominate Sanders, This is amazing. The Russians will have to reconsider who to work for and best screw up the US. Sanders is just as polarizing as Trump, and he'll ruin our economy and doesn't care about our military. If I'm Russian, I go with Sanders this time around. This was quoted a couple places, and I think someone from Bernie's camp was like, this is what happens when a billionaire shows up and a finance guy and is like, well, at all costs, we gotta avoid Bernie.
So that's former head of Goldman Sachs.
Yeah.
So Goldman Sachs is used to buying our government. They're like, we don't like the Russians interfering in the election because normally that's our job. So Goldman Sachs has interfered in every election in my lifetime. They've bought off endless number of politicians in the Republican Party, but also definitely in the Democratic Party. And so, in fact, they're sometimes called government Sachs because of the revolving door. They've had several Treasury secretaries that were from Goldman Sachs. Lloyd Blankfein complaining about interference in elections. Well, that's rich. And what's hilarious about cable news people is that they don't get that mentioning that as a legitimate source actually helps Bernie.
Yeah.
They're like, well, average American would like to tell you that the head of Goldman Sachs, one of the most corrupt financial institutions in the country, has decided that you should not vote for Bernie Sanders. So there you have it, everybody. The bankers have decided you must vote for someone else. Well, I can't think of a better ad. I appreciate it.
Another upshot from last night is Deval. We all know that Andrew Yang dropped out, and we did videos on that last night. But Deval Patrick has dropped out after getting less than 1,300 votes, saying, "I believed and still believe we had a strong case to make for being able to deliver better outcomes. But the vote in New Hampshire last night was not enough for us to create the practical wind at the campaign's back to go on to the next round of voting. So I have decided to suspend the campaign effective immediately." That was an interesting little blip on the radar. Everybody said, okay, it seemed that was the moment that it seemed Biden wasn't a sure thing. The first person to come out was Deval Patrick saying, I give it a shot, and got absolutely no momentum.
He, of course, now or just now worked at Bain Capital. Then he got into the race. Probably will go back to Bain Capital or another financial institution. And of course, every pundit on television said, "Oh, Deval Patrick, knight in shining armor. Here he comes to save moderates and conservatives and corporations. Oh, Deval Patrick, he's so great here." No, it's okay. He's going to save the day. I express skepticism that yet another moderate who has positions that are identical to all the other moderates who are already unpopular in the election would gain any traction. And this finance background, not necessarily helpful in this primary. Who was right and who was wrong? But that's okay. If you turn on cable news now, every pundit that backed Deval Patrick and talked about what a big force he would be in the election is apologizing as we speak, right? I mean, when you turn on cable, they say, "Oh, my bad." Like for example, last night.
Yeah, there's no incentive to do that.
Yeah, no, the only incentive is honesty. So like last night, I talked about how I got Klobuchar wrong. You know, everybody remember I used to go Klobuchar, right? She's turned out to be tough and authentic and interesting, right? That's what an honest person does. They go, "Hey, I got this right and I got this wrong." Have you ever seen anybody on television go, "We got it wrong"? They said Barack Obama couldn't win. They said Hillary Clinton couldn't lose. They said Joe Biden was the most electable. They said Deval Patrick would be a force to be reckoned with. Has anyone ever apologized for being monstrously wrong all the time?
So going forward, the takeaway from that Reuters thing that we referenced was that Buttigieg did well, so did Klobuchar. We know we point out the problems with that framing, but between those two, what happens next? Like which of the moderates emerges from that, or do none of them? Do they go all the way through to the convention?
I hope they keep going all the way because look, I think that in their panic, the establishment has a wrong strategy, which is Buttigieg, Biden, Klobuchar, Bloomberg, Deval Patrick, not Bernie. Okay, that's a great strategy for us to win. So have at it. I love the smell of establishment panic in the morning. So keep it going, brothers and sisters. I know who the right one to pick is. I'm not gonna tell you. Can you imagine they watch and they're like, "Oh, Cenk said this one, so okay, we should back that one." You know what? Maybe I should tell them because whatever I say, they do the opposite. So.
All right, we will have coverage of all those. Nevada, South Carolina are the next two contests. So TYT.com/join. and then pay attention to our advertisements as we promote it going up to those events. We got to take a break right now. When we come back, Aida Rodriguez will join us, and we have way more news for you.
We hope you're enjoying this free clip from the Young Turks. If you want to get the whole show and more exclusive content while supporting independent media, become a member at tyt.com/join today. In the meantime, enjoy this free segment. Welcome to the Young Turks, or welcome back, Cenk Uygur, Brett Erlich, Aida Rodriguez, everybody.
Hey.
You know, Ida's got a show on HBO.
HBO Max.
Well, that's the new HBO, right? HBO Max is coming out. It's HBO Max. It has all of HBO. So when is it, Ida? It's still for a while out, right?
Yeah, we're writing right now, and we still don't know. They can say no.
But still, that I saw that news, which like in this town, any news that is good is great, and that was great news. So it made it triple, quadruple great. It made me so happy. Like for an entire week, while the news itself was soul crushing, like that really kept me going.
It was soul crushing that week. It was hard. But I just want to say thank you to all the TYT people who have come out to my shows. They come out in every city. I have a collection of pictures and videos that I've taken with them that I am going to put together. The numbers have grown, so thank you.
That's awesome.
All right, so speaking of TYT folks, let's get a couple comments in from you guys. I love this one. Alexis B says, a new TYT member, new Bernie supporter after the recent coverage on MSNBC. I, as an avid fan, left them for good. As a religious Jew, I couldn't stand for the Jewish caricature photos, the Red Scare tactics, and ignoring his wins. No more. Nice. I love it. Welcome, Alexis. Thank you for coming here, for being open-minded. You're awesome. tyt.com/join for anyone else who wants to do that as well. Ruth M says, I watched both MSNBC and CNN last night, and the coverage was definitely slanted against Bernie. Oh, how they hated to see him win by a very close margin, put it in quotes there. However, I believe it was on MSNBC that I heard the following. Culinary workers in Nevada received brochures that stated that if Bernie were elected, they'd lose their health insurance immediately. I recall it may have been Rachel Maddow was on the show. Can you check this out for us? Yes, they did do something like that. And sometimes union leadership doesn't really represent the union members. And so that is a much longer story, and we'll look into that and get back to you guys. But this scare tactic that they're putting out there, that you're gonna lose your insurance, total BS. I don't care who it came from. And if so, the culinary worker union is saying that, they are lying, because Medicare for All gets you better insurance with expanded coverage. And if you're a union member, then you could use those benefits, the negotiations that they had, for higher pay instead of wasting it on healthcare that you'll get through Medicare for All. So you should ask your leadership, hey, why are you lying about this, you liar?
You haven't changed.
All right, last one. Bearded Progressive on Twitter says, I can think of another Jewish man who was hated by the establishment and wanted to give away all the wealth. Well, not some, but all. And they tried to stop him, only for him to be a martyr. So keep it up, mainstream media. Bernie's a legend only, and his legend only grows. Hashtag Bernie beats Trump, and so does Jesus. Okay.
Jesus beat Trump. Also in basketball, he beat Trump.
Oh, all day long. Bernie was once a carpenter. I'm not saying anything, I'm just saying.
That's the biggest claim. Also walks on water on Thursdays, it's weird.
But I'm not kidding though, he literally was a carpenter at one point.
It's amazing.
Okay, what's next?
Just a quick announcement, where is Anna? She is in Munich at the Munich Security Conference doing your hashtag MSC again this year. She's slated to interview several world leaders. And we'll have those clips published for you to watch on youtube.com/the Young Turks from the 14th to the 16th. So keep an eye out for that. Very excited for her. She did it last year, had a great time. Interviewed some amazing people, so it's great that they had her again this year.
Yeah, sehr gut.
Oh, was that German?
Yeah, that's I'll be like Buttigieg. I know German. Brett and I were talking about this during the break. I just realized we're such suckers. He doesn't know Norwegian.
Like, you give him a test.
Yeah, like he knows a paragraph or two of Norwegian, enough to say it on cable news and have everybody go, "Oh my God, what a genius! He learned Norwegian to read a book. He doesn't know. I know that scam. You read the beginning, you read the end, and you read a couple paragraphs in the middle. He doesn't know it." Okay, if you're our viewers who are Norwegian, ask him a bunch of questions on Twitter in Norwegian. Let's see how that goes.
Yeah, but you can't do it on Twitter. He's just
I know, he's just gonna look it up. He's gonna look it up.
Are you kidding me? Google Translate's amazing. You just hold your camera on it and it translates for you.
If you speak Norwegian and you ever see Buttigieg anywhere, start spitting Norwegian at him and see if he can keep up. That guy's full of crap. He doesn't know it.
Speaking of full of crap, this is one of the most amazing videos you'll see in a while. It is both soul crushing and hilarious. So Sarah Sanders had some things to say about Mayor Mike Bloomberg's chances against Trump in the 2020 presidential race. Unfortunately, those claims she made were ridiculous given the record of the man she worked for. Take a look.
Bloomberg, if he continues to rise, is going to have serious problems with women, with African Americans. His record, his language is offensive and atrocious. Then again, maybe he can buy the DNC just like Hillary did and steal it from Bernie like they did in 2016. Either way, I think this is another great night for President Trump.
So there's some logic for you. What'd you think?
A billionaire from New York that has crude language might be racist and sexist. Who does that remind you of? Now, unfortunately, it's big portions of that are true for both men. But I love when Republicans feign concern for the Democratic Party. Like, I'm really worried about the Democratic Party. I mean, they might be rigging things, and I'm worried about the Democratic voters. Oh, are you, Sarah Huckabee Sanders? We really appreciate your concern. So, I mean, the former boss, so-called billionaire from New York, he's not, but pretending to be, who said that he grabs women by their genitalia without asking their permission. I believe that's called sexual assault. Brags about it, has been charged dozens of times by women of sexual harassment, assault, etc., and said the Central Park Five should be executed. Turns out they were innocent, 5 minority kids. When they found out they were innocent, Donald Trump said, well, they probably did something. They were in Central Park, weren't they? I mean, they were in the park while being black and Latino, so why shouldn't we execute them? And Bloomberg, to be fair, said yesterday, we showed it on the program for you guys, said, yeah, of course we go and target only blacks and Latinos, young males. We don't target whites, and that's because the blacks and Latinos do all the crime. And he said, if we don't find a gun on them, that just means they have it at home. Because they gotta be guilty. I mean, they're black or Latino. If they don't have the contraband, they're obviously being clever and hiding. And I told you yesterday, turns out on stop and frisk when they did the numbers, guess who had more guns? White folks. But stats don't matter if you're doing decisions based on race. So they both do it.
I mean, this is exhausting. It is exhausting, but I guess Sarah Sanders. So at this point, I'm now starting to think, is this mass hysteria, a lack of consciousness, or downright evil? I'm starting to, now I'm really, because, and I don't want to compare it to the Holocaust was horrible, but when you think about how people can do horrible things and not be fazed by it, do they suspend their consciousness? Because this woman, she has no shame. She has no shame. She just described Donald Trump from top to bottom when she was talking about Bloomberg, as if that's not okay when he does it, but.
Yeah, it's totally fine. To say that the straight-faced part of it drives me crazy.
Yeah.
It's just, as like, what's going on in her head when this is happening? As she's saying this, does she have some self-awareness of the hypocrisy? Absolutely she has to. But the reason that she got the job, and the reason why so many people get jobs like the one they have and end up still in Trump's inner circle, is because they have no shame.
That's right.
It doesn't register as something that, it might register as something they feel bad about, but they don't change their behavior whatsoever, either because of ambition or I guess I can't come up with any other reason than ambition.
What makes me laugh is that, first and foremost, no disrespect to the Jewish people. Let's just be clear about that.
None taken.
Thank you for speaking on behalf of all of you. The funny thing is, you just said that the fake concern for the Democratic Party, but not the black and brown people that they're talking about. Yeah. There's no concern for the actual people, which continues to prove the point that they're just pawns in the game. They don't care about the black and brown people. They just care about winning the argument about who cares about them the most, but without caring about them at all. And that is where black and brown people get bamboozled, gaffled into these conversations and these arguments, and they don't realize nobody gives a crap about you. They're just saying, hey guys, I'm concerned about these people voting for you because you guys are playing them, but nobody's really talking about the stuff that's happening to these people.
Because that's all, it's just a messaging game as far as like what registers for me is Sarah Sanders doesn't really think she has a chance with getting that voting block, but what is she gonna do? Give up? Not try? She's not trying very hard. All she needs to do is say those words with a straight face over and over again. And other people who are about to go on TV on that same network saw Sarah Sanders say it, so it must be the Trump administration's line. So I'm gonna say that again and again. And then they have enough people saying it where who knows, maybe we do get those, maybe we don't. But then later on, somebody else picks up the coverage and says, well, she says that she should get the black vote and Bloomberg says he should get the black vote. Which billionaire are you choosing from? And that's your choice. And then it just slowly warps the media discussion until it doesn't even reflect reality anymore.
So those are our two choices, two racist billionaires. Okay, it's really refreshing to find out. And to your point about how what happened to the actual minorities?
Yeah.
Well, Donald Trump tweeted about how racist Bloomberg was as soon as this happened.
We have it. Here's the tweet. Wow, Bloomberg is a total racist, and he retweeted the video itself. So if you wonder whether there is any self-awareness, the answer is probably not. But there's at least like 2 or 3 people here who are like, hey, maybe you should take it down. So he actually did delete it, which is a tacit admission that he realizes his own record on stop and frisk, at least.
Yeah, so he puts out, as I got him. He's a total racist for doing stop and frisk. Probably somebody walks in the room, Mr. President, you're on the record for supporting stop and frisk like 5 times.
We have it. We have a video during his presidential run in 2016. Let's take a look.
There's been a lot of violence in the black community. I want to know, what would you do to help stop that violence? Black on black crime.
Right. Well, one of the things I'd do, Ricardo, is I would do stop and frisk. I think you have to. We did it in New York. It worked incredibly well. And you have to be proactive. And you really help people sort of change their mind automatically. You understand. You have to have, in my opinion, I see what's going on here. I see what's going on in Chicago. I think stop and frisk. In New York City, it was so incredible the way it worked.
Something that Edwin pointed out is in the bottom corner of that screen. It says Trump's minority outreach. As he points out, please reach out as I'm gonna stop and frisk you.
I love that the people clapped. I would love to see the people clapping. They're like, yes, stop and frisk.
Yeah, I think the clapping is like, I know the Democrats hate this, so I'm gonna clap for you right now.
No, I think they were. The funny thing is that when white people that are racist say that the other white people are being racist, like this time it's not us. It's not like they're doing the racist stuff. It's like, yo, this time it was not us, it was them.
But yeah, so there was that, and then as you brought up the Central Park 5 thing, we have video of him with the Central Park 5 messaging disaster that even after the facts came out, he's still clinging to.
Mr. President, will you apologize to Central Park 5? They've been exonerated, there have been videos and movies shown about the case, and you came out with a full-page ad saying that they should die. They say the death penalty.
Why do you bring that question up now? It's an interesting time to bring it up. You have people on both sides of that. They admitted their guilt. if you look at Linda Fairstein and if you look at some of the prosecutors, they think that the city should never have settled that case. So we'll leave it at that.
The person who actually did it confessed. Okay, you say, hey, there's wrong confessions. There was wrong confessions in the earlier case. They found his DNA on the victim, and there's absolutely no question the Central Park Five were released and then given a settlement for all the years and decades that they were wrongly imprisoned. There are not two people on both sides of that. So it's interesting. So these guys, Donald Trump called for their execution. Turns out they were innocent. They were young kids. They were totally railroaded. We know for a fact that it wasn't them. And he says, well, there are people on both sides of that. And then people go out and chant, the Jews will not replace us. And then they run over someone and kill someone. And he goes, well, there are fine people on both sides. Well, he could always find someone on both sides. Oh, you know, somebody says you were innocent and we totally screwed you over because of race. No.
But there's always people on both sides when it comes to defending his point. Now, because there aren't both good people on both sides when it comes to the opposing point of view, right? So it's only when it comes to what he's saying.
Yeah.
I always wanted him to, some reporter to ask him, can you name one person on the other side in the Charlottesville one? Among the people who chanted the Jews will not replace us, just tell us just one person who's a very fine person on that side.
Yeah, and they did. I mean, that's the thing with Ukraine. It's like, can you mention anyone else with corruption in Ukraine? You can't. All right, we got to move on to another story about history that is being deleted. So under Trump's administration, the archives are deleting essentially the history of human rights violations that are occurring at the border. Maybe not all of them, but it is one of those things that is so easy to go under the radar if it's not for groups like Democracy Now! and us who point it out. So there is a man named Matthew Connolly who's a history professor at Columbia, and he's been speaking out about the process by which the things that we need to remember so that when we look back through the long lens of history to see how we messed up as a country, we can have proof that we should never do this again. And he says, what I found and what others have found is that records relating to the death, the sexual assault of undocumented immigrants had been designated as temporary by the archives. And in other words, these were records they decided had to be deleted after sometimes 3 years, 5 years, 10, or at most 25 years in one of the cases. In December, huge numbers of records relating to shoddy medical care, the civil rights violations of these undocumented immigrants, all these records are gonna start to be destroyed later this year. There was a small amount of time when this came out a couple months ago. People spoke up, but they just were like, all right, no one's paying attention. We're gonna go ahead and delete these vital histories.
So there's a misconception about the origin of the phrase political correctness. Now people use it as like, some people say, hey, don't offend people, and others say, well, I want to offend them, so you're just doing political correctness. That's actually not what political correctness is. It was originally used by actually both the Nazis and Stalinist Russia. And in both instances, it meant that the news had to do not what was factually correct, but what was politically correct. So if they said the Jews or vermin and all whatever horrible things they said, that was what the news had to report, not that they were actually human beings, etc. I can give you a million examples. And the other part of political correctness was you must not say things that are true, and if you did say them, you must remove it, okay? And then of course the Nazis then went on to say, well, you know what, that's not quite good enough. Let's take all the books that we don't like and start burning them. And so that way only our propaganda will exist and people will not be able to access what is actually factually correct.
Yeah.
And here we are, where they're beginning to burn the things that are factually correct because it was considered politically incorrect to state the facts.
So I will say this, when I went to Israel, one of the women that I had a conversation with, I went to a Shabbat dinner. She was a Holocaust survivor. She told her children and they told their children. She had great-grandchildren in the building. So what I'm going to say to all of the people with regard to this administration and those who are complicit with everything that this administration is doing is that you can delete all the records you want. You can burn the books, but the people shall speak to all of the injustices that this administration has inflicted upon its people. So you can do all the deleting, you can hit that button all you want. You will still go down in history unfavorably for what you have done, because there are people who have pictures of those babies in those cages on their phones. There are people who have them in their own clouds, because there's nothing you can do. Just like technology works in your favor, it works in our favor as well. So I don't even want to talk about this because it just made me angry, because it's just part of the oppression of people of color that is part of the history of what America has been and continues to be. It is in the fiber of this country and in all of us. And until we deal with it, honestly, we will not eradicate it. So you can delete all of it that you want. Donald Trump will always be the man that goes down, unless somebody else beats him, as the worst president that the United States ever had.
Yep. And so meanwhile, he then turns around and says, my poor friend Roger Stone, all he did was witness tampering, lying to Congress, breaking all these different laws, threatening people, and he's gonna get 7 to 9 years. No, I gotta fire everybody who was involved, and I gotta save. I don't want my friend in a cage. Oh, you're black and brown kids? Oh, put them in cages. But what did they do? They didn't do anything. Doesn't matter. Doesn't matter, put them in cages, but not my beloved, wealthy, powerful friends. That's who Donald Trump is.
With his Guy Smiley looking ass. That's who Roger Stone looks like, Guy Smiley from Sesame Street. Get rid of him, yeah. It really is, it's really unfortunate that he's brought all that street business into the White House, and all of the people cheering him on are gonna be the ones who are gonna suffer the consequences of that street business, because there are no rules, there's no order, and there's no loyalty. So keep hyping your man up, because he will eventually. The chickens always come home to roost.
In fact, can I just say real quick, now they're targeting Matt Gaetz, who was their top supporter in Congress. But he dared to disagree with them once. He actually had the correct conservative position, and the correct constitutional position. You must ask Congress for authorization of war. Now remember, Trump ran against endless wars. Gaetz says we shouldn't have endless wars. I don't agree with, I love his nickname, Baby Gaetz. I don't agree with Baby Gaetz on anything else. And he was the top henchman for Trump in the House. But he's right about that. And Trump's like, you defied me. Now they're shutting him out of meetings, and they're telling everybody, hey, you know what? Gaetz is not one of us anymore, etc. So there is no loyalty from Trump. All there is thuggish behavior. And so you think he's your friend? You think he's gonna back you? Hilarious.
Ask Omarosa.
Yeah, unless you specifically helped him cover up a crime and he owes you for that favor, and it's still to his benefit that you cover up that crime. Outside of that, you're gonna get thrown under a bus, every single one of you.
Yeah, so those are the big things. There was one little detail. I read this guy, Matthew Connolly's op-ed that he wrote in the New York Times. And it's a pattern with Trump to try to get rid of evidence, to bring it back to what we were talking about at the beginning. This quote's amazing. He says, President Trump has long made it a practice to tear up his papers and throw them away. It is a clear violation of the Presidential Records Act, which is supposed to prevent another Watergate-style cover-up. Workers in the White House Records Management Office who used to tape these records together say they were fired without explanation. So it's even, and I guess especially, the little notes that he writes for himself, he would tear it up and people would have to go through the trash by law to reassemble them. Like, imagine the tape there on the wall trying to find, do you have a page? I got do you have the Constitution on the other, or whatever, and tape them back together. And this guy fires the ones. And that's also, so you know, that's the system. It's a giant scheme to do this. And the reason, and the way that they know that is because they've slowly, over time, been defunding the archiving department. And the reason the archives are so important is because if another agency, for whatever reason, decides they want to get rid of this evidence, the archives are the place where it lives forever, where you can eventually go find it. And if the archives are the ones who have to get rid of it, and this policy started in 2017, kind of driving it up to a higher level, if it's not there, it's not anywhere.
Can you imagine putting together those stickies and it'll say 2 Big Macs, 3 large fries, Diet Coke?
Yeah, gee, I wonder who wants to get rid of evidence.
Criminals.
And last thing is, remember when he had a one-on-one meeting with Vladimir Putin for a long time. He comes out of the meeting and literally snatches the votes. I mean, the votes, that's true too, but the notes from the American translator's hands and says, give me that, and doesn't give it back. I wonder why. Can't quite figure it out.
Crazy. We got to take a break. We got more news for you after this.